A moped is a type of light motorcycle designed to provide economical and relatively safe transport with minimal licensing requirements. Mopeds were once all equipped with bicycle-like pedals, but moped has been increasingly applied by governments to vehicles without pedals, based on their restricted engine displacement, speed, and/or power output. Mopeds occasionally resemble powered bicycles, but most are now step-through designs and step-over designs similar to a regular motorcycle. Although mopeds usually have two wheels, in some jurisdictions low-powered 3- or 4-wheeled vehicles are also classified as mopeds. In most countries, the legal driving age for a moped is lower than for regular motorcycles and cars. Mopeds are typically restricted to 45 km/h or 50 km/h from a maximum displacement of 49 cc, though there are a few variations. Motor scooters are sometimes referred to as mopeds. History. The term moped now only applies to low-power vehicles, but pedals were fitted to some early motorcycles, such as the pictured 1912 Douglas. Pedaling away from stationary was a great improvement over run and jump, and light pedal assistance was valuable for climbing hills. Better transmissions with wider ranges, better clutches and much better engine performance made pedals obsolete on most motorcycles by 1918, but the pedals on mopeds remained valuable for their original purposes as late as the 1990s. The earliest mopeds were bicycles with a helper motor in various locations, for example on top of the front wheel. They were also called cyclomotors. An example of that type is the VAR copyright Low Sol X brand, which simply has a roller driving the front tire. A more innovative design was known in the UK as the Cyclemaster. This had a complete powered rear wheel which was simply substituted for the bicycle rear wheel, which originated from a design by two DKW engineers in Germany. Slightly larger machines, commonly with a 98cc engine, were known as autocycles. On the other hand, some mopeds, such as the Czech Major, were derived from motorcycles. A further category of low-powered two-wheelers exists today in some jurisdictions for bicycles with helper motors. These are often defined as power-assisted bicycles or motorized bicycles. Other jurisdictions may categorize the same machines as mopeds, creating a certain amount of confusion. In many countries, three-wheelers and microcars are classified as mopeds or variations thereof. This practice is not restricted to the Third World. France and Belgium classify microcars such as the Alexam similarly or as light quadricycles. Etymology. The word moped was coined by Swedish journalist Harold Nielsen in 1952, as a portmanteau of motor and pedal. It is however often claimed to be derived from motor velocipede. According to Douglas Harper, the Swedish terms originated from trampig med, mo, toroch, ped, allure, which means pedal cycle with engine and pedals. Other terms used for low-powered cycles include motorbicycle, motorized bicycle, motor-driven cycle, and ʻmoʊpɛd. The term ʻmoʊpɛd is sometimes used for mopeds that do not have pedals. Emissions. Mopeds can achieve fuel economy of over 100 mpg US. The emissions of mopeds have been the subject of multiple studies. Studies have found that 2-50cc mopeds, with and without catalytic converters, emit 10 to 30 times the hydrocarbons and particulate emissions of the outdated Euro 3 automobiles standards. In the same study, 4-stroke mopeds, with and without catalytic converters, emitted 3 to 8 times the hydrocarbons and particulate emissions of the Euro 3 automobiles standards. Approximate parity with automobiles was achieved with NOx emissions in these studies. Emissions performance was tested on a gram-per-kilometer basis and was unaffected by fuel economy. Currently in the United States, the EPA allows motorcycles, scooters, and mopeds with engine displacement less than 280 cc to emit 10 times the NOx and 6 times the CO as the median Tier 2 Bin 5 automobile regulations. An additional air quality challenge can also arise from the use of moped and scooter transportation over automobiles, as a higher density of motorized vehicles can be supported by existing transportation infrastructure. Racing. The wide availability of previously used but still functional small motorcycles in Western societies enables and encourages cheap forms of racing. Dirt racing forms of this sport are sometimes staged in the stadiums of agricultural shows, where, unlike football and athletic grounds, the surface is not too important. One popular series uses chicanes consisting of stacked large-diameter tractor tires and requires a team of riders, each doing 10 laps and then pulling into the middle of the ring for changeover. 2 heats and a final, each lasting 25 minutes, can be held in one day interspersed with speedway racing and other displays. Another series once held on full-size racetracks, including Le Mans, ran for 25 hours and was billed as the longest race in the world. Safety. Safely riding a moped mostly requires the same considerations as safely riding a motorcycle, but the lower speeds, while reducing some dangers, increases others. The biggest danger is that other traffic may not notice the presence of a moped. Bright clothes and reflective fittings help. Drivers may even see the moped, recognize it as harmless to them and simply forget it's there, pulling out of side turnings into its path. Similarly, a car approaching a moped from behind will approach it more quickly than the driver expects, and the driver's attention may be more attuned to other automobile traffic rather than the moped, increasing the likelihood of an accident. This is a particular problem for mopeds used on high-speed roads where they may not be intended to travel. Mopeds are often illegally tuned for higher speeds, powers or engine displacements than allowed. For this to be legal, such vehicles should be re-registered as motorcycles, and their driver's license requirements, taxes, insurance costs and minimum driver age would be higher. A tuned vehicle, not designed for higher speeds, is not as safe as a purpose-designed motorcycle. A survey of Finnish high school students found that 80% and 70% of their mopeds were tuned, for vocational and gymnasium students, respectively. Only 10% of trade school students had a moped that conformed to legislation. The average maximum speed was 72 km/h, far higher than the legally allowable 45 km/h. Another study reported that of school-age moped owners, 50% of boys and 15% of girls have an illegally tuned moped. Individual countries' regions, sports moped. In the United Kingdom during the 1970s, a high-performance derivation of the moped concept were developed, aimed at 16-year-olds. It was created in order to circumvent governmental legislation aimed at forcing young motorcycle riders off the road. These new laws, called the 16er Law, were introduced by John Payton, the then Conservative Party Minister for Transport in 1971. They forbid 16-year-olds from riding motorcycles of a 250cc capacity as they had done before, and limited them to 50cc machines until they were 17. The law provoked motorcycle manufacturers to develop new class of motorcycle which were then called sports mopeds, or, colloquially, 16er specials, and was subject to much criticism. The market for these was primarily young males. Sports mopeds were ostensibly 50cc motorcycles, capable of doing more than 50 mph in some cases, with bicycle-style pedals added to them as an afterthought which the law required were capable of propelling the vehicle. Models were produced by Japanese manufacturers Honda, Yamaha and Suzuki, and European companies such as Puch, Fantic, Gilera, Gitane and Garelli from 1972 onwards, the most famous of which was the Yamaha FS1E. They included roadsters, enduro and motocrossers, café racers and choppers or scooters, and led to a boom interest in motorcycling similar to the early 1960 rocker period. The government responded again by bringing in even more restrictive legislation in 1977 which limited mopeds to a weight of 250 kg and a top speed to 30 mph. The move contributed to the demise of the UK motorcycle market. In continental Europe no such restrictions existed and such vehicles could be ridden by 14-year-olds. See also. References. External links, Moped at DMOZ.